On America's Independence Day, a decorated veteran, hoping to simply watch the parade, was instead pushed, insulted, and dismissed as a mere beggar. But when a young Marine lieutenant recognized the hero beneath the tattered jacket, the true story of Sergeant Danvers would electrify Washington, D.C., forcing a nation to confront its conscience and salute the man they so unjustly ignored. Get ready for an unforgettable 4th of July revelation. The 4th of July in Washington, D.C. was less a date on the calendar and more a vibrant, pulsating entity. The entire city seemed to vibrate with a singular, fervent energy, radiating outwards from the iconic heart of the nation's capital. The National Mall had ceased to be merely a stretch of green lawn. It had transformed into a living, breathing tapestry of humanity, a vast, joyous sea of faces turned in anticipation. American flags, in every conceivable size, from monumental banners that unfurled proudly atop towering poles to tiny, handheld pennants fluttering wildly in the eager grasp of children and adults alike, danced in unison, a vibrant, continuous wave of red, white, and blue. The air itself hummed with a palpable excitement, punctuated by the distant, rhythmic rumble of drums and the brassy fanfare of marching bands, signaling the imminent start of the grand parade. It was a proud, boisterous display of national unity, a powerful testament to enduring strength, a joyous celebration of freedom. Yet, on the very fringe of this jubilant, surging tide, a solitary figure stood apart, a quiet island in a sea of effusive cheer. He was an elderly black man, his hair a distinguished crown of silver that seemed to catch and hold the sunlight, illuminating the wisdom etched onto his face. His frame, stooped by the undeniable weight of decades, was enveloped in a military jacket. Its once vibrant olive green had faded and softened into a muted tapestry of time, bearing the subtle creases of countless winters and the silent dignity of a life lived with unwavering purpose. The fabric, worn thin at the elbows and shoulders, seemed to hold untold stories within its threads. Nestled discreetly beneath the frayed material on his left breast, a small, tarnished corner of a distinguished service medal peeked out, its worn edges a testament to an honor that, in this moment, few recognized. It was a humble, almost unseen declaration of a past he carried with a quiet, profound dignity. He stood perfectly still, his body an anchor in the constantly shifting current of the crowd. His right hand, gnarled and dry, trembled almost imperceptibly as it gripped a sturdy wooden walking stick, its worn handle polished smooth by years of constant use. His deep-set eyes, clouded by the passage of time but still sharp with the enduring light of memory, meticulously followed the joyous flow of people streaming past him, their faces alight with anticipation. He made no attempt to push forward, to jostle for a better view, or to assert his presence in the tightly packed ranks. He seemed content, almost deliberately so, to remain by the rough metal barrier that delineated the parade route. His sole effort was to maintain a small, unobtrusive sliver of space, just enough to allow him a clear, uninterrupted line of sight as the military contingents prepared to march past. His longing was simple, pure, to witness the grand procession, perhaps for one final time, to feel the profound swell of pride for the very flag he had once bled to protect, the ideals he had tirelessly defended with his very life. But even this humble, almost invisible wish was not to be granted. A young security guard, sharp-eyed and bristling with the fresh authority of his pristine uniform, strode purposefully along the perimeter. He moved with an air of absolute control, an enforcer of boundaries. His gaze, quick and dismissive, swept over the old man. His lips curled into a subtle, almost imperceptible sneer as he took in the faded military jacket, the silver hair, and the dark skin. His expression conveyed an immediate, baseless judgment, a preformed conclusion about the man before him. It was a look of casual contempt, a dismissal born of an ingrained bias. "Hey, old man, you can't stand here." The guard's voice was sharp, cutting through the festive hum of the crowd like a razor. It carried an edge of impatience, an implicit command that brooked no argument, leaving no room for a polite request. "Move along. Go on. Find somewhere else." Walter, startled by the sudden, harsh interruption, looked up, his expression one of quiet surprise, not defiance. He hadn't expected such hostility. I want to watch the parade, he replied softly, his voice thin, almost a whisper against the backdrop of distant drum rolls and patriotic chatter. There was no arrogance in his tone, no challenge, only a simple, earnest plea, the humble request of an American citizen on his nation's holiday. But the guard didn't even bother to listen. His eyes narrowed, his sneer deepening into a condescending smirk, fueled by the old man's quiet vulnerability. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a low, mocking growl, meant only for Walter's ears but dripping with venom. "What are you doing here, old man? Planning to beg or steal something? Don't pretend you're here for the parade. Get out of here now." The words were a direct assault, a cruel accusation that stripped away any pretense of courtesy or respect. The guard seemed to relish the power of his words, the immediate fear they might instill, the ease with which he could assert his dominance over someone he deemed beneath him. Without another word, without a moment's hesitation, the guard's hand came up, brutally shoving the old man towards the edge of the paved sidewalk, pushing him directly onto the rough, uneven grass. The sudden, unexpected force, combined with Walter's already precarious balance, sent him stumbling backward, his old legs buckling helplessly beneath him. His cane, a trusted companion, clattered uselessly to the ground, spinning away just out of reach, with a small, agonizing crack. His left hand instinctively flew out to break his fall, slamming against the unforgiving concrete barrier. A sharp, searing pain, cold and immediate, shot up his arm, making him gasp, a strangled sound lost in the festive noise. His hand trembled violently, the immediate agony a stark, cruel contrast to the distant, celebratory music. He crumpled to his knees, his face momentarily contorted in a silent grimace of pain, struggling to catch his breath. Around them a few heads turned. People, their faces alight with the festive spirit of the 4th of July, glanced over, their eyes widening momentarily at the sight of the old man on the ground. But instead of rushing to his aid, instead of expressing concern or outrage, a collective wave of indifference, punctuated by sharp whispers, rippled through the onlookers. They didn't see an injured veteran, a man who had served. They saw a disruption, an anomaly that didn't fit the joyous, pristine narrative of the day. "Oh, look, another fake veteran trying to get sympathy money," a woman's voice carried clearly, laced with suspicion and a cynical dismissiveness. "Yeah, probably just begging," a man grumbled, shrugging, his eyes already drifting back to the parade route. "Look at his ragged clothes. Probably just looking for trouble. Always something with these types," another added, turning away impatiently. "Can't just enjoy the holiday without them causing a scene." Their comments, like tiny, sharp pebbles, struck Walter, each one adding to the sting of his physical injury, compounding the humiliation. The casual contempt in their voices was a betrayal, a wound far deeper than the fall itself. As Walter struggled to push himself up, his injured hand throbbing, a young family, a couple with two small, excitable children, their faces painted with flag designs, casually jostled their way into the very spot he had just been forcibly removed from. They laughed, taking out their phones to secure the perfect angle for their live stream, completely oblivious or utterly indifferent to the old man limping away. They claimed his former space as their own, an empty victory in the grand, self-absorbed parade of life, utterly disregarding the pain and profound humiliation of the man they had just displaced. Walter, wincing with every step, retreated further, his back pressing against the rough bark of a large oak tree. He cradled his throbbing arm, already feeling the bruise forming beneath his skin, a silent, painful testament to the unprovoked assault. In his clouded, pain-filled eyes, the distant American flag still rippled, its stars and stripes shimmering under the bright July sun. His vision was blurry, his body aching, but his spirit, though bruised, remained unbroken. All he had wanted was to stand there, to watch the parade, to feel the pride, perhaps for one last time, for the colors he had shed blood to preserve. He was a ghost of a glorious past, an echo of a bygone era, unseen and unheard by a nation too busy celebrating its present to remember the quiet sacrifices that had made their freedom possible. The air thrummed with a renewed energy as the first triumphant notes of brass instruments cut through the excited chatter. The grand parade was finally beginning. From the staging area, a young lieutenant, resplendent in his crisp dress uniform, a distinguished ribbon of honor draped across his shoulder, prepared to step out, poised to lead his band of service members onto the sacred grounds of the National Mall. His posture was impeccable, a picture of military precision and pride, reflecting the honor of the day. But as he prepared to take his place at the head of the formation, something in his peripheral vision snagged his attention. His eyes, trained for detail and discrepancy, suddenly narrowed. Far in the distance, partially obscured by the shifting mass of spectators, he saw a familiar silhouette. It was an elderly man, stooped and clutching his arm, slowly retreating towards the shade of a large oak tree, the very tree where the guard had pushed him. A flicker of something, a recognition or a stark intuition, crossed the lieutenant's face. The old man's slumped posture, even from afar, spoke of distress, not just weariness. Without a moment's hesitation, a decision formed. It was a break from protocol, a defiant act against the rigid order of the parade. The lieutenant, an officer of discipline and duty, abandoned his position in the meticulously arranged formation. His boots, usually keeping perfect time, now pounded urgently against the pavement as he broke into a rapid stride, pushing through the bustling crowd. He moved with a speed that belied the formality of his uniform. His sole focus the injured veteran. He reached Walter in seconds, his uniform a sudden vibrant splash of color against the faded greens and browns of the old man's jacket. The lieutenant didn't hesitate. He snapped to attention, his back ramrod straight, his hand rising in a crisp, unwavering salute. A gesture usually reserved for superior officers, for heroes of immense stature. His voice, clear and resonant, sliced through the surrounding chatter, carrying a tone of deep respect and genuine concern. "Sir, are you injured?" he asked, his eyes scanning Walter's face, then his bruised hand. "I deeply apologize, sir." The sudden, formal greeting, delivered to the very man who had just been publicly shamed, sent a ripple of astonished silence through the immediate vicinity. People stopped talking. Their heads turned, their gazes shifting from the proud young officer to the seemingly insignificant old man. A single voice, sharp with indignation and disbelief, broke the stunned quiet. "Lieutenant, what are you doing saluting him?" A man from the crowd blurted out, his voice tinged with the same contempt that had been aimed at Walter moments before. "He's just some beggar." The lieutenant slowly turned, his gaze sweeping over the faces of the onlookers. His eyes, usually filled with parade day pride, were now hard, sharp, and unwavering, like steel. His voice, when he spoke, was not just firm but infused with an indignant fury that commanded immediate attention. Every word was delivered with the precision of a military command, cutting through the prejudice and ignorance. "He is not a beggar," the lieutenant declared, his voice ringing with authority. He pointed to Walter, his gesture conveying immense respect. "This is Sergeant Danvers, a retired United States Marine Corps veteran." The name hung in the air, a whisper of a legendary past. He didn't stop there. The words flowed, a torrent of undeniable truth that began to dismantle the crowd's preconceived notions. Sergeant Danvers commanded a blocking force battalion in Iraq in 1991. The scale of Walter's service, the weight of his responsibilities, began to sink in. He personally saved dozens of his fellow soldiers from certain death under heavy fire. Each revelation chipped away at the contemptuous image they had built. He was personally awarded the Medal of Honor by the President of the United States for his bravery, the highest military honor bestowed by the Commander-in-Chief himself. The sheer magnitude of his heroism, contrasted with his recent humiliation, began to twist in the stomachs of those who had scoffed. And then, The lieutenant delivered the final, devastating blow, a truth that struck at the very heart of the capital's pride. And he personally stood guard and defended this very Capitol building when it came under attack years ago. The words hung in the air, a chilling reminder of a past threat, and the quiet, unwavering courage of the man they had just scorned. The entire crowd was plunged into a stunned, absolute silence. Faces that had been sneering were now pale, contorted in disbelief. The celebratory cheer was replaced by a collective, horrified realization. A lone voice, filled with dawning horror, broke the silence. But the security guard, he called him a beggar, a thief. He pushed him down. The speaker's voice cracked, and then a ripple of horrified agreement spread through the crowd. Suddenly, a young man in the second row, clutching his phone, let out a guttural cry. His thumb flew across the screen, his face a mask of shock and dawning responsibility. "Oh my God! I recorded him being pushed. Oh my God!" His frantic words confirmed the guard's monstrous act, turning the casual dismissal into an act of outright assault against a national hero. The security guard, who had been watching with a defiant smirk, now turned absolutely white. His face drained of all color, his eyes wide with terror. The crowd, now galvanized by the truth, turned their collective fury on him. Several people surged forward, their anger hot and undeniable. A woman pointed a trembling finger directly at him. He humiliated him. He pushed him down. The lieutenant's gaze, colder than ice, fixed on the trembling security guard. He beckoned him forward, his voice low, but carrying the unmistakable force of absolute authority. "Come here," he growled, each word a hammer blow. "How dare you show such contempt for a citizen, especially when you were so clearly ignorant of the facts? You will be investigated. Immediately, after this parade, I will ensure a full report is filed. Your actions will not go unpunished." The security guard, stripped of his bravado, his face a mask of abject shame and fear, began to tremble uncontrollably. He mumbled apologies, incoherent pleas for forgiveness, his eyes fixed on the ground. Walter, however, remained silent, his gaze fixed on the American flag waving proudly above. His quiet dignity a stark contrast to the guard's public meltdown. The victory was not in words, but in the truth finally revealed. The truth, once unleashed, spread like wildfire across the National Mall, scorching the remnants of prejudice and ignorance in its path. The lieutenant's powerful declaration, amplified by the stunned silence and then the collective gasp of the crowd, ignited a chain reaction. Mobile phones, once used for casual filming or dismissive judgment, now buzzed with fervent calls, texts, and social media updates. News of Sergeant Danvers, the decorated Marine veteran, the hero of Iraq, the defender of the Capitol, being assaulted and humiliated on Independence Day, exploded through the throng. The palpable atmosphere of celebration quickly morphed into one of profound shock, then simmering shame, and finally, an overwhelming surge of public reverence. Within moments, a flurry of activity erupted. A small group of young soldiers, their uniforms crisp and their faces grim with a mix of respect and quiet fury, broke ranks from a nearby formation. They moved with purpose and urgency, their eyes fixed on the solitary figure of the old man still leaning against the oak tree. They reached Walter, their movements gentle and deferential, extending hands to steady him. They weren't just assisting an injured elder. They were tending to a living legend, a brother in arms whose sacrifice had been forgotten, then cruelly dismissed. From the head of the parade route, the parade commander, a high-ranking officer whose face was usually a mask of stoic professionalism, now showed a flicker of deep concern and regret. He had witnessed the lieutenant's impassioned revelation and the immediate, horrified reaction of the crowd. He knew, instinctively, that an egregious wrong had been committed, an insult delivered not just to one man, but to the very spirit of service that the day was meant to celebrate. He moved with swift, decisive authority. He approached Walter, his stride firm but his expression one of profound respect. Without a word, he signaled for a folding chair to be brought forward, directing it to the most prominent spot available, directly under the largest American flag unfurling magnificently in the gentle July breeze. It was a place of honor, usually reserved for visiting dignitaries or the most esteemed guests. He then extended his hand, his voice clear and resonant, carrying the weight of his rank and the sincerity of his apology. "Sergeant Danvers," the commander said, his voice laced with utmost respect. "On behalf of this city, and on behalf of every man and woman who has ever worn this uniform, it would be our profound honor if you would take this seat. This is your day, sir. This is your parade." Walter, his arm still throbbing, his mind still reeling from the sudden, dramatic shift, looked at the outstretched hand, then at the chair. He didn't speak. His eyes, though still clouded by recent pain, held a flicker of something ancient and unyielding. With the quiet assistance of the young soldiers, he allowed himself to be gently guided to the seat of honor. He sat, his back still remarkably straight despite his weariness, under the vast expanse of the flag, a silent testament to a service that transcended recognition. As the parade finally began its stately march, a powerful transformation swept through the crowd. The initial confusion and shame had given way to an overwhelming wave of awe and respect. As each military contingent, each marching band, each color guard passed by, their members, young and old, male and female, all turned their heads, not towards the dignitaries in the VIP stands, but towards the humble, white-haired man in the faded jacket. Each soldier, each sailor, each Marine, each airman, each Coast Guardsman, snapped their head towards him, offering a crisp, collective salute. It was a cascade of respect, a silent acknowledgement of a true hero in their midst. Walter, his bandaged arm still aching, found his own hand trembling as he instinctively raised it, offering a shaky, but unwavering salute in return. It was a gesture he had performed countless times in his youth, a muscle memory of duty and camaraderie. The rhythmic beat of the drums, the soaring notes of the brass instruments, the vibrant flutter of the flags in the bright July sun, all now seemed to play in perfect harmony with the silent, profound moment between a nation's military and one of its truest, most unsung heroes. Around him, the very people who had scorned him, who had whispered accusations of begging and fraud, now stood humbled, their faces etched with deep regret. They offered quiet, murmured apologies, some even bowing their heads in shame. The young family who had so casually stolen his spot stood awkwardly, their expressions a mix of embarrassment and belated admiration. The security guard, now escorted away by other officers, was a ghost of his former arrogant self, his public humiliation complete. Walter's arm still throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, a physical reminder of the morning's injustice. Yet, deep within his heart, a profound warmth began to spread, slowly, steadily, pushing back against the cold sting of humiliation. It wasn't triumph or vengeance. It was something far deeper. It was the quiet, comforting knowledge that, even in this vast, bustling sea of people, in a nation so often distracted by its own spectacle, there were still those whose eyes could truly see. There were still those who recognized the true value of the old soldier who had, through his unwavering courage and silent sacrifice, preserved the very freedom they celebrated. His pride, once shattered, was now fully restored, radiating outward, warmed by the collective gratitude of a nation that had finally, justly, remembered him. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any thoughts or opinions about this story, feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel to support us. Your support means the world. Thank you again.